We've started the webinar. We're just going to wait a couple more seconds to let people in, and then we'll get started. All right. Let's see, we've got a handful of folks, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's live online author event with Greenlight Bookstore. I'm Shani from Greenlight, and I'm thrilled to be hosting tonight's event with Jarred McGinnis, presenting his new book, The Coward. He'll be talking with Raymond Antrubis, so you're in for an excellent time. Before we start, I just want to say a huge thanks to Jarred, Raymond, and the team at Canongate Books for making this happen, and to all of you for showing up. We're grateful for your support and for the chance to make space for conversation and connection. Now, just a couple of housekeeping things. In our Zoom webinar tonight, you can see and hear the speakers, but they can't see or hear you. They can see that you're here, though, and there are a couple of different ways you can interact with the authors and with each other throughout tonight's event. The first is the chat, which you can find by clicking on the icon that looks like one speech balloon, where you can post comments and thoughts. And if you have a specific question you'd like to have answered by the author, please post that in the Q&A module, which is the two speech balloons icon. We'll only be pulling questions from there at the later part of this program, so make sure to put your questions in at any point. Tonight's featured book, The Coward, is available for sale from Greenlight Bookstore. You can shop in person from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. at both our Fulton Street and Flatbush Ave stores, or order online at greenlightbookstore.com for a quick pickup or for shipping anywhere in the US, and I'll be dropping the buy link in the chat. As thanks for attending tonight's virtual event, we're offering 10% off the featured book. Just enter coupon code GreenlightEvents10 into the coupon discount section and online checkout. So our interviewer tonight is Raymond Antrubis. Raymond was born in London to an English mother and a Jamaican father. He was awarded the 2017 Geoffrey Dahmer Prize, judged by Ocean Vuong, as well as the 2019 Sunday Times University of Warwick Young Writer of the Year Award. He is the author of the poetry collections, The Perseverance, and All the Names Given. Raymond is currently based between London and New Orleans. He'll be speaking with our featured author, Jarred McGinnis. Jarred was chosen as one of The Guardian's 10 best new writers. He was the creative director for Moby Dick Unabridged, a 4-day immersive multimedia reading of Herman Melville's Moby Dick involving hundreds of participants. His short fiction has been commissioned for BBC Radio and appeared in respected journals in the US, Canada, UK, and Ireland. He also has a PhD in artificial intelligence, but mostly he inspires the able-bodied by driving a car all by himself and taking his daughters to the playground. Jarred's new book, The Coward, is about hurt and forgiveness. It's about how the world treats disabled people, and it's about how we write and rewrite the stories we tell ourselves about our lives and try to find a happy ending. Jarred is going to start us off with a reading from the book, and then he'll be talking with Raymond and with all of you. So take it away, Jarred.
Thank you very much. Hello, everybody. I'm gonna read a chapter. It's near the beginning, and it's basically you get a good feel for the main characters, the father and the son, and Sarah. And they're at a kind of stage of kind of a light entente between the two men. And I'll just get going. Chapter 13. I dug around the junk drawer in the kitchen looking for something to write with. There was a box of matches, which I took, which made me think about cigarettes and having at 26 to ask my father if I could borrow money for smokes. That was too much reality for this early in the day. I found a metal pen with surprising heft, and it was a freebie from Patrick's, my brother's business, McGinnis Properties, written in a fancy John Hancock script. I wrote, Jack, going to take a walk, Jarred. And I thought about that sentence, take a walk. What else do you write? I crumpled the paper and went to go find Jack in his greenhouse. Jack, I'm going out for a bit. He said, it's almost 2. Why don't you wait until I clean up and I'll go with you? I kind of want to be by myself. There was worry on his face. He was trying to calculate the right thing to say. Calm your old balls. I'll be fine. I don't get far on foot. Yeah, that's true, he chuckled. You need some money? And before I could answer, Jack fished out of his wallet from his back pocket and handed me a soiled smudge 20. Thanks. I crossed the gutter at the end of the driveway, a little more easily this time. Left was how we went to Mr. Donut. I went right. There was a grocery store at the end of the neighborhood and I could get some smokes. I pushed myself along the street, and this was the first time since the accident that I'd have been alone. Before the accident, I preferred solitude. Now, with the chair, being alone scared me. At the crosswalk, the zipping traffic made me flinch. I hated myself for the cowardice as I waited for the light to change from don't walk to walk. My palms were sweaty. I looked left, right, scared that at any moment a car was going to slam into me. With every push across the intersection, panic fluttered in my chest. When I reached the other side, I had to wait for a few seconds for my hands to stop shaking enough so I could continue pushing my wheels. In the grocery store, I went up and down the aisles from produce to dairy with no real purpose. It had been so long since I had been in the shop that I'd been shopping that it felt novel. And a teenager in a store's uniform stopped stacking cans of tomato soup as I passed by. Hello, sir. Can I help you with anything today? No, I'm fine. Okay, let me know if there's anything you can't reach, he said as I continued down the aisle. In the meat section, I maneuvered to try to lift a ham into my lap. Before I could, another teenage employee, a girl this time, appeared, her ponytail swinging behind her. I can bring that up to the front for you, sir. She reached to take the ham from me. I got it, thanks. You sure? Yes, thank you. You sure, sir? Okay, have a nice day. And she said, and she bounced away. I was stopped once more before I decided to leave. And at the service counter, I was carded for cigarettes. I showed him my ID. Are you here all by yourself? Yes, I said testedly. Was it a car accident? Really? We stared at each other. The ham too? He said, pointing at my lap. No, this is my ham. There are many like it, but this one is mine. And I slapped it. Sorry, sir. And he took my money and gave me my change and my cigarettes. Have a nice day. You too, I said, moving away, the weight of the ham making it a bit difficult. I sat outside the grocery store and had a cigarette. Shoppers went in and out, and the nicotine reverie tugged away at my thoughts. I wasn't ready to go back to the house. Across the street was a grocery store, and there was a 1950s gas station and garage that had been converted into a coffee shop called the filling station. Inside, it had everything expected of a coffee shop: raw wood tables, exposed brick, and a roasting philosophy, chalked in on a large piece of slate. Above the tables, bromeliads hung instead of light bulbs at the ends of electrical fixtures. Some had turned upwards to form red-leafed jays. The barista was about my age. She was singing along to the music and wiping down the coffee machine. She was pale, she was red-haired. Her t-shirt said, "Sexy Senior Citizen" in tiny letters. When she turned, I noticed that her belt had missed one of its loops in the back. She greeted me with, "Nice ham, what would you like?" "Black coffee for me, and Senor Ramon, here we'll have a water." And I picked a table with a view of the counter, and I set my ham in the chair next to me as I drank my coffee. Back home, Jack came out of the garage when he heard the front door. "Hey, how'd your first solo flight go?" And I held out the meat to Jack. It was pork and gimp day. Being a cripple, bring a cripple, get a ham. What luck, right? He took it from me and put it in the fridge without comment. I lay on the couch. The locking of brakes and the positioning of the feet on the floor, the transfer over, the pulling of the legs, one by one, had become automatic. Jack came back with a letter in his hand and sat in his favorite chair. My stomach turned as I tried to guess what kind of letter. "You promise not to freak out on me?" "I don't know. Freaking out's my thing." I tried to stay calm, shifting so that I was lying on my side and I could see him better. My knees clunked together and there was a flash of electric fire from my damaged nerves. "You don't have to tell me," Jack said. "However, I did meet the love of my life today, so now's the time for bad news." "Oh yeah? That's good." "Very good. Fingers crossed has a thing for men and aluminum. Hit me. What's in the letter?" I stretched my arm out and Jack handed it to me. "A gentleman by the name of Farouk Al-Thani, or more exactly, Mr. Al-Thani's lawyer, writes to say he is performing an asset search and he is asking me for my home insurance policy details." I clenched my jaw so hard my teeth hurt. The letter mentioned Melissa's death, my responsibility, and it referred to civil case law as if quoting Bible verses. That car should have killed me too. "Listen, I got two things. I got doodly and squat, and you can have both of them. Listen to me. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about you. I think I'm done for the day. I'm going to bed."
Read. All right, thanks, Jarred.
Yeah, no problem.
Hello, everybody. I'm just going to be in conversation with my friend and the brilliant novelist, human being, father, writer, wheelchair user. I don't know. Of this great book, The Coward. One thing I want to say at the top is I think this might be the first novel I've read since becoming a father myself. And one thing I've noticed about reading this book is I instantly actually sympathized, like straight from the jump, with the father. Despite, like you kind of telling us all of these kind of things he's done wrong and where he's kind of failed as a parent. But he's, for so much of the book, he's so kind of earnest. He's always trying to almost do the right thing. He's trying to make up for things. And, I know that you were asking earlier about like whether poets get asked what is true, but, you've got the character, the protagonist does have your name. So I will say that,
Yeah.
And if I'm honest, it felt like a lot of it felt true, but I'm also prepared for you to say, well, no, I'm just a good writer, because that's what good writing is, right? It needs to feel true.
Yeah.
So so I guess there's not really a question there, but I'm interested in the process of the book, and what it is that you feel, if anything, writing this book taught you, and also about the title. How did you come to the title?
Yeah, I can start with that. I can start with the title, and the title does come out of it was a hard fought title, actually. So everyone was very nervous about this title. My agent initially was like, said it's like rebarbative, and I was like, I'm going to look up that word and then I'll get back to you. And I looked it up. I was like, yeah, rebarbative. That's what I want. To barb, to kind of like it's sharp. It's a gut punch. And I thought that was true to the book. And I had another title that was a bit whimsical because it is a funny book. And like, I can see them thinking in terms of like marketing and all that. It's like, we gotta, this guy's very funny. It's very hard to write funny.
Yeah.
But I thought it was unfair to the reader to like give him this whimsical title and then get hit with some pretty serious emotional trauma, the men that are exploring. And so, it was up to, basically, it ended up being the publisher himself kind of having a meeting with everybody and like asking me like what I want, what title I wanted and why. And it was like, we're going to do it. Let's do it. And the reason it's The Coward is, I wanted a strong title, but I also was kind of thinking about the irony of The Idiot. And Dostoevsky's The Idiot. He's the idiot.
Of course. Yeah.
Because, he actually believes in being a good Christian and he's surrounded by all these hypocrites.
Yeah.
And that's the irony in this one, is that these men see themselves as coward. And I use coward, I use in this section, you use the word cowardice. And there's one other time when he sees his father as a coward.
Yeah.
And that's the worst thing you can be as a man. And, and in French, there is no feminine form. For the it's an insult reserved for men. And the irony is these men are doing the kind of brave emotional work that is not rewarded at all. And this thing is and that's what I wanted, that tension there, and that's the title. And it was a sharp short shock of the title, and that's what I wanted. And I'm glad I got away with it.
Yeah, no, it's good. I just want to add on that question I asked you about the process, and just because you brought up masculinity, because it is a kind of very male-centered, a consciously male-centered book. That's deliberate. And so when writing through this book, because you write so much about pain and managing pain, and also I think you're right to emphasize how funny the book is at the same time as that. But I can really imagine like that there must have been some emotional journey for you? Like,
Yeah.
was it a cathartic experience?
I mean, it absolutely was. So it's really kind of fascinating, this process of kind of fictionalizing self, because it's a piece of fiction. And like the irony of this is like one of the first, when my mom finally, my mom first read it, she's like, "Why did you kill me?"
Right at the beginning as well.
You're like, you asking that question is very fascinating, and that just shows you this kind of process of fictionalizing self. It's a novel, and I was never interested in writing memoir, and it created that space, but it really was an exercise in like, what is that process? Because I'm very interested in the kind of process, because so much of my process is intuitive, and I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm just so I read a bunch of memoir to kind of figure out like, what is that as a form, and can I steal that as a novel writer? And I did, there's little things to kind of, there's just this light brush of kind of like the kind of memoiric voice of looking back. And I do that in a very deliberate way. And it's usually to kind of point out to the reader kind of some of the assumptions I know they have about disability. And also kind of as a character looking back in his own life, and kind of the tension between him as a newly disabled body, but a mindset that is able-bodied, and that tension and kind of inhabiting that.
Yeah,
but,
I want to say that I think that was picked up so well, and I think this is why I'm kind of leaning on, like, I know because you asked about the truth and what was true in it and what isn't true in it, but like, while you were writing it, was there like, were you surprising yourself with like how much kind of internalized ableism,
exactly. And so what really was interesting to me, because the character is very angry, but he's angry about something else. He's angry about what happened when he was a teenager, and his mother and his father. And I set out to write a book about disability that was about a disabled character that wasn't about disability. And I very quickly make sure the reader understands that the wheelchair is not this guy's problem. And you see his prickliness in that section I read and stuff like that. And what was really interesting is like, oh, wait a minute, I had just like put that stuff aside, because that's my personality. I'm a depressive. I turn that anger inwards, whereas he turns it outward. And when I started writing him, it became like he was this version of me that kind of processed anger. And I remember writing it. I remember there were some incidents like on the street when I'm like I was really writing him, and I was in character. And I'm a 40-year-old man, and I almost got into a fist fight in front of the Ace Hotel in Shoreditch, because these guys were doing nitrous balloons, and I heard him say like, "Look at that Christopher Reeve shit," and I just went, "Whoa!" And I started picking a fight with him, and my wife was like talking to me, and she's like, "Where's my husband?" And she saw me like, I basically said like, "Do you have something to say?" And I insulted his drugs. I said, "F off and go do some real drugs." And like the poor kid was just stunned, because like, I'm this guy in a wheelchair is trying to fight me. And and it was his friend that kind of like pulled him away, and it was just like, what am I doing? Like, like, and it was just like this absurd thing. It's like, that's not me. And like, and it was all because of this character, and it was right in the middle. I remember that, like, oh, something's going on here. And I think it's just my process of kind of really inhabiting that character, but that character was really easy to inhabit. And I used that. And when I made that connection, because I very early tried to not make him me. And when you're writing, you're fighting against something, and like, what am I doing? Like, let's see what happens if I go with it. When it's just not working, it's not working. Yeah. And when I kind of opened, my soul to this dark energy, it helped the writing, but made my life a bit of a misery. So yeah.
Well, you did keep the same name.
Yeah. So and I mean, this is it. That's literally, that's when I did. I was just like, okay, he had another name, and then at some point I stopped pretending that we didn't have something in common, and I did a control, a kind of replace all. And I use names very deliberately to make sure I'm signaling, things. And so, because it's not my dad's name, and I want to make that absolutely clear, that I was making a fictional character because I wanted to explore certain territories, unbound by, you know, my relationship with my real father. And I mean, you write about your father as well. I mean, and this is that kind of thing. And when I was reading your collection, that's what I was like, you know, does everyone go like, so is that your real father or is that your poetry father? Like, you know, it's like you just read it and you like, this is about fathers and sons, you know? So
yeah, that's so good. I mean, you know, you got that other kind of I don't know what I want to say, semantic with the word of father, the kind of religious father. I mean, like I say, the poetry father, the literary father, you know, the baggage of the father actually
exactly.
is what is kind of written.
I'm doing the same thing. I just don't have this, and it annoys the hell out of me that poets are just that succinct. Like I have to do like 3 or 4 chapters before it's something you do and like just breaking a line. It pisses me off about poets. Like making me cry by like, oh, you put a little line break. And I'm like, what the hell did he do? That's witchcraft. I mean, but it's the same thing, right? I want that emotional. I'm doing the same thing as you. It's just that I just can't get it tight.
Well, so here's what I want to ask you then about the form. What is it about the novel form that you're drawn to? Because you even said that you read memoir, you know, another form to kind of prepare you psychologically for this book. So like, what can the novel do that, you know, nothing else can?
I mean, it's a great question because I was a short story writer, but to me, a short story writer was doing some things that I like in poetry. And what I love about poetry is I have no urge to write it. I can just go in as a casual and just love the hell out of it and not have any kind of like, you know, oh, that bastard got this award. Like there's no, you know, and I love that. And I want to keep that pure because I sullied my short stories and my novels because now I'm on that, you know, I'm on the game board and now I'm like, oh, that one won the award. Oh, you know. So, but I mean, it's really interesting. So I was a short story writer and I was really I loved, and it still is my like love of the form. And then I was like, okay, how do novels work? And it's just that, you know, I was a scientist in my day job. And I think it's just that way of like, I want to pull it apart and see how it works. And I think a novel really does have that that time of an inhabitation of a world. And these people really can stick with you. And you can do much more. You can really kind of build something. And it's a really interesting effect. Whereas like the short stories I love are the ones that feel like you've swallowed a novel in like 2,000 words. And that's something it's almost like the reverse of like, you know, you are just kind of like just luxuriating in this world for over several hours. And that's really unique in that form. And I think there's structure that I really loved. What I come to really love about the novel is there's these really kind of beautiful structural things you can do that I loved as a reader, but like to be able to play with that and kind of think about in terms of structure. And it's less, it's more forgiving than the short story. And the same with poetry, right? If there was a loose word in there, you know, it's going to fall apart. And the novel kind of gives you it's more lenient in that. And I like that. And even kind of a lot of thing I was learning is how to kind of just don't batter the reader, like give them some pacing and space and let them kind of like, and that's something I loved about the form. There is a lovely kind of time commitment between the viewer, you know, the reader and the writer. And there's something intimate about that. I love that. And that, people like talk to me about Jack, and even like minor characters as if they exist.
Yeah. I can see that though. That makes sense to me because I think there's a lot of projections happening for both, for the people in the novel, the characters, but also for the readers.
Yeah.
So much kind of at play. So it feels like a kind of self-aware, like psychological kind of book as well.
I mean, and I think that's something in a novel uniquely, even if you think about the long forms of film, the novels can really get into the you know, the spirit of, you know, the mind, the spirit of the character. And I hate when characters are just there to serve the plot. That really pisses me off. If I know that I can see if I can see like the writer's smudgy fingerprints and like, oh, they're just doing this so they can move this on the plot. And so I really, to me, even the minor characters, like there's a minor character called Fritz, he's not on there much, but you know, I really wanted him to have his own kind of story and really a glimpse of maybe, you know, there's a whole nother novel of this character Fritz and what his journey was, because it's very, you know, him and Jarred kind of fly very, very close to each other. And he was also another form of love, because this is what the book is actually about. It was about, you know, this love between Fritz and Jarred, and Jarred kind of misunderstanding what that love was, and Fritz knowing that Jarred doesn't understand what they have and all that. And that was just one little, but he's just on there very briefly. But people like, you know, I really liked Fritz. I was like, I did too. I hope he's okay. You know.
Yeah, that's true. That's so true. I mean, so like, I guess another kind of element of the book I'd like to ask you about is kind of touch on it, but I do want to kind of just pick up on the theme of disability. I mean, and I know that this is like the crux, this is the thing that people always want to go to, and you're probably bored of that element of it because there are so many other things happening in the novel. But I am genuinely interested to ask this to you specifically, because there's always this kind of talk about who gets to tell what story, right? And there aren't that many writers that I can think of who are, you know, people with disabilities who are writing that, you know, in a sense, their own story through, you know, whatever form they want to kind of call that. But in classic literature, there's so many people with disabilities. Steinbeck is also littered with people with clear mental health issues and disabilities, and, you know, even though they're not kind of named. So I just wanted to, do you think that can able-bodied people write disability well? Is that a thing? Because I know Zadie Smith had that essay a while ago where she was like, look, I've written in the voice of a 10-year-old boy from China, you know, and I can do that because I'm a good novelist. And I feel like in poetry, in my form, I feel like that's less less forgiving, probably less interesting as well. Like to kind of to do that, you know, persona poem in this kind of world, completely out. You know, it's a different. I feel like it's a different rule, different atmosphere, different thing.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You know, what's your thoughts on that?
It's really, so like I'm pretty broad church. I'm like, all that matters to me is if it's good. So I don't care about the author, and I'm you know, it's very hard not to know about the author these days, and I kind of resent that. Man, if you can, like, you have Jarred McGinnis's permission to write whatever you want, but if you mess it up, I'm coming after you. You know, that's it. Like, that's all that matters to me. And like, you know, and yeah, so I think, I'm on team Zadie Smith here. Like, you write whatever you want, but you better do it good. I mean, I have the advantage of having a very unique experience, and I've done the time. You know, I've had 20 years to think about this. So you know, and what the problem is just so many examples of just people just like, you know, oh, I need to make this character stand out, so I'll slap a disability on there, and then we'll know which one. Oh, it's the character with, you know, missing the eye or something like that. And it's just lazy bad writing, and you know, that's the one unforgivable sin. And I'd like to keep that away. And it's really interesting to see like young writers really struggling to write outside of identity. They've been told they can only write about their identity, and then it's right there on the front page. You know, you can just see them, like, they can't peel away all the kind of identity stuff and the things that people have put on them because they've accepted a particular identity. And I want nothing to do with that. Like, and that's where I really kind of kick against and because that's I'm also left-handed, and
Left-handed.
yeah, exactly. And I think about my left-handedness about as much as I think about my wheelchair. It's like I just get on with it, and and people don't think that they're bringing their biases, and they do it all the time. And to me, it's like disability is a meaningless term because it is so blanket. It could, those experiences are so different. So what that's actually saying is not us, those guys.
Yeah.
And that gets me. It's like, and that's why I jokingly say that it shouldn't be disability. It should be impeded by antipathy or apathy, because that would then generally be a broad term for disability. Is that there are, the rest of y'all just can't be arsed to make the world better for somebody that isn't you. Impeded by antipathy. Like that's the term. That's my term.
That's good. And in fact, that's a good segue to ask you about your background in AI.
Yeah.
What is the link there with AI, literature, disability, masculinity, parenthood? How do you you talk about shifting identities, but you're so many different things.
It's funny, yeah. Maybe I just get bored easily because I got into computer science because I got hurt in America and I needed health insurance. So I got a computer science degree so I'd have a job, and then I got a job. It's like I hate having a job. So I became an academic, and that's what brought me over to the UK.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. Everyone always asks you to write sci-fi. It's like, no, I know the math. It's not interesting to me. And so my PhD work was again synthesizing two different approaches. I took this bit of math and applied it to this bit of philosophy. And I see that in my creative world as I'm just constantly I make stuff, and a lot of it fits in book shapes, and I'm not so concerned. There's a whole, this is why I was playing with the idea of fictionalizing self and what is that process. And I'm always kind of experimenting, and I'm still doing that. And you've been involved with the live literature events. I make these kind of experiences because I'm like, what if you treat the poetry is very comfortable with the live experience of poetry, but prose wasn't. So it's like, what if we treated a reading of prose as a first, what I call a first class entity, this idea of can that be an art form as well? And then I kind of looked at performance and visual arts, because you worked with me and Sam on the Darkness project.
Yeah, that's cool.
So it's these kind of things of what is this process? And that's that. I guess I said it's the scientist in me, but it's always there was this kid who became a scientist because he was always kind of putting chocolate and peanut butter together and see if it would be good and that kind of thing. Yeah, so I think it's just inevitable. I just make stuff, and I pull things from different things because I'm never fitting in any category. And that's what I like being a foreigner, is because I was an American surrounded by American, people just thought I was a weirdo. Now I do something weird, they just, that's just the American.
Yeah,
that's what Americans are like.
My wife Tabitha, she obviously, she's also American. Something that she talks about being in the UK, she's irritated by British people talking about America. Why are the British people so up Americans' ass? Why they got so many opinions about America? There's all of this funny tension in our kind of world, because we, like we're kind of based between the two places, and go back to America and someone says something like, so Brexit, ha ha ha, and then we go, so Trump, the capital, ha ha ha, and then there's all of that kind of weird something going back to the book, a question I heard a poet being asked once that really stuck with me, and I would like to put this to you, because it's interesting to me that I can really see how this is a debut novel as well. That I was like, wait a minute, this is your first novel, and it doesn't feel, interestingly, I don't feel like it felt like a first novel. This felt like a seasoned voice in a sense. But then I could also see, it was like, because the chapters are so short, I'm like, this is a short story writer as well. Like that kind of aesthetic is there. So my question is, do you feel, now the book has been out for a bit, you read from it, and you kind of interacted with different people, you know, your family and readers alike, like, do you feel aesthetically resolved? Is this like a book that you're like,
that's a really good question. This is why I like doing these with other writers, because that's the kind of things we think about. So it's interesting. So if you mean in terms of like this style, absolutely. So like, I feel like the way I wrote, it's very lurid, it's very visual, because I think this book demanded that. Like, I really just wanted to pull this reader through what is actually this kind of very kind of delicate emotional story between these two men. But I kind of thought about like the way, you know, genre fiction does pacing, and I was kind of just, again, like stealing from different approaches to see if I could make it work. Like, can I make, you know, can I have a depressed character and still get people to read? And like, you know, apparently yes, because depressed characters are really boring. And I was like, I love solving that problem. And yes, so like I'm writing now, and I'm working on the second book, and like, and you know, kind of reading this through for like events and stuff like that. It's much more kind of stripped back, and it's about me being a father in a wheelchair, doing things like moving to France where I don't speak the language, with two small children in a wheelchair to a hilly city that I've never been to. Like, I literally had never been to Marseille before we moved there, but like Brexit deadline, I wanted to use those rights. So like, we did it.
Yeah.
And my style is much more stripped back. And the things that I'm getting excited about when I read, like, you know, the new Claire Keegan, is just that kind of stripped back, and really kind of, this book dares you not to care. And now I'm doing it the reverse. Is like, you know, I make it very easy, if you don't pay attention, not to care. I want to show you these like beautiful little moments that you have in life. So this is, you know, it's much quieter. And when I read, so I did an event in Austin at a bookstore, and I read this chapter that my wife like absolutely hates, because the humor is quite filthy. And it's been so long since I read it, like I was just like cackling, you know, like a fool, because like, I can't believe I wrote this. Like, this is like, it's over the top funny. But I mean, again, like, these are the guys I love. Like, they're like, The Sellout by Paul Beatty has like one of the best, funniest, most inappropriate chapter like ever written. And like, I know, like, when I wrote that, I was like, how do I do what Paul did? Because, oh my God, like, I remember reading, like, you know, The Sellout on the train, the overground, and just like cackling like a madman, because he just goes one more, you know, that beautiful. And and I was like reading that chapter, and I was like, oh yeah, now I get why she hates this chapter.
Paul Beatty's a good person to reference, actually, like, not just because of the satire, the social commentary, but I saw him do an interview once, and someone in the audience asked him, is like, oh, can you talk a bit about your background in psychiatry? And he was like, man, no one's ever asked me about that. And so he talks about how much work he's done, like, before writing books. He knows about the mind, right?
Yeah.
And so he knows about, you know, it's not just sociology. Again, it's kind of, you know, psychotherapy and what things like inherited trauma, racial, like, it's really complex what's actually happening, you know, even the humor. And so I feel that, like, you've achieved this thing in The Coward, which has this similar thing of like, it's painful humor. You know, it's always pushing and pulling. Physical pain as well, not just like imagined, the tormented kind of, you know, self-pitying young guy who's just like, you know, lost his life, whatever. Like you write, I think you write really well about like I felt it. Like
I mean, that was something very deliberate, and something I really tried to work on, because I knew like it was going to be people. The majority of my readers will not have had a spinal cord injury. It's like 1 in 2 million, I think, are the chances.
Right.
And so it's like, how do I make, with just using words, how do I make them feel just like, because like this particular like neurological pain you have.
Yeah.
And one of the crazy things is that for a very long time, it's almost like your body re-feels the trauma, the pain.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
so like in my accident, I had basically a dislocated, so basically my leg, my lower foot was hanging off,
Oh,
and so
wow.
both bones were broken. And
Wow.
then for probably about a year and a half, I would every once in a while feel that again, as if my brain was trying to reprocess this pain that it lost because of the nerve damage in my spine.
Mm.
And you would feel, and so I try to capture that very early on.
Yeah.
I want people to kind of go, oh,
Yeah.
and getting that right, like getting it to a point where they don't stop them reading, but like I want them to go, oh, I hope it's over. Oh, it's over.
Yeah,
And then
yeah.
that nice kind of like light, something, and then something like light and humorous comes. And like there's a particular scene in the opening to really like, here's what it feels to hurt and physically. And then immediately go to something lighter to kind of give the poor reader a break. But yeah, no, that was very deliberate and really hard to do. So I'm very happy that I got it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think that it worked in the you talk about like readability and the thing of keeping reading, like the shortness of the chapters. So I was able to read really fast, actually. Like I got for the first 50 pages, like, oh wow, I'm already 50 pages through, because you kind of initially I looked at it because I've got the hardcover, and I'm just like, oh man, oh wow, I've got a lot of time. Am I going to get through all of this? And I did.
Bloody poets.
Yeah, right.
Look at these tiny books you guys put out.
Yeah, I'm like literally. Oh gosh. I wanna ask you, and this is a selfish question, so forgive me, but this is like a parenting and a writing question.
Yeah.
So you're writing, like you said that you were kind of like living with, I suppose, this idea and your ideas for a while, and before or while writing the book, I imagine you were a parent, right, while you were writing.
So I'd written shorts, and like that's it, like short stories. Like basically my process was like start writing stuff, oh, this is good, and then I just keep writing and writing until I get like a first draft done. And of course the first draft's not good, but I could just like, the muse calls me and I'm like, bam, right in there, and I get that real fast. And then that happened, whatever time. Not when you have kids. And
nope.
No, that's not how it works. And so it's hard. And I mean, I've said this, is like you've got a tiny human now. And it was like, I remember, because I was stay at home, my wife stayed at work, I was like, okay, my job is flexible, I can work at night. And I remember there was one day I had two at the time. So I had a 6-month-old, a 2-year-old. And I tried to write one email, a really important email, like a really important email. And then I was trying this email and it took all morning. I just lost my, mind with them. I was like, and that was like, you know what? No, I know that I'm on duty, and I'm on duty. I'm hanging out with kids. I don't try to get anything done. And literally every big kind of moment in this kind of, the trajectory of the book, my kids are doing something like, it's just like literally, like when I got the call from my agent that like, Canongate's interested, they're fighting over like a plastic egg or something and like trying to murder each other. And like, you've got to be kidding. Can I please hear my life's dream happen? Is that okay, guys? They don't care. That's the universe telling you it does not matter. Like in 7 billion years, the sun will be swallowed by the earth. So calm down, son. So that's like, so take those lessons. But yeah, it's frustrating. I mean, now they're older. Like you said, I think you got a 7-month-old. Yeah.
7 months, yeah.
Man, if you can get an email done, like count that as a success. But just know that that writer's brain is still kind of at work and observing, and you've got material. Like, you're gonna, and that's what I'm writing about now. Is just like the relationship with my wife has changed, my father, like, my kids, and that's really interesting. And you just, it will come, it will get easier. That's all I say, man. You are in the thick of it, and just kind of really enjoy it. And like now they're at school, so when they go to school, like, man, I am right there at the desk trying to get things done. And it's tough because there's still book stuff happening, and it's, your greatest hope is it's a success, but success is a pain, because then you got to like write copy, and you got to do this, and you got to go to this meeting, and da 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 da. And I'm like, guys, I just want to like go hang out with my imaginary friends. Like, I want to worry about, like, is this comma in the right place? Am I overdoing it by describing a fly crawling across the sill rather than walking? That kind of stuff. That's the meat. And it's fat. So that's it. It's gotten easier, but I would say, like, man, just but totally carve yourself out of space, even if it's a day. Like, I needed just a day to, like, just scribble. I'm in a better mood. Everyone's happier. My wife is a very smart woman. She's like, you're being a bit of an ass. Like, let's figure out how there's one day where you just go and play with your imaginary friends. And that is, I think that's really useful. That made me a better parent, even if it was just, again, like, just being there, scribbling, or reading, and that kind of thing. And that balance is really important, because it's that much harder. You got to be a good partner, a good father, a decent human being, and a good writer. And, like, it's just that much harder.
No, it is. I mean, and so I'm going to go back to the coward then, because I'm interested in this response I had to, like, how tender I felt towards the father in this book. Again, I don't want to assume that you had your own kind of hang-ups with your dad. I think all of us have some hang-ups with our dads, like, people at the end of the day, and something that comes with, the perspective of parenthood. As you do look at your own parents, and you're like, I really I've softened a bit, like, on both my parents, like, oh wow, you did this. And
I mean, again, it comes from that generosity of, like, just knowing that. And I really wrote the heart of it without kids. And I was like, man, I really nailed that. And I just think it came from, like, trying to understand where this character come from. But really, it's actually down to the plot. Like, Jack, the father, has made his peace. He understands what happens. And then Jarred has not. And that's just, like, good tension. That's good writing. Is you throw this guy who hasn't made amends, and kind of like, life gave me a really crappy deal, and I'm pissed. And the other guy, the dad, was like, yep, it ain't about fair. If and I think he says something about that, like, this life ain't about deserves. And that's true. And you seek justice, seek it in the other life, because it won't be here. And he's that's what he needed to survive. And then putting those two men together, that's just good fiction. That's good plot. So but he's great. He's a pain in the ass, but he's great.
Because he never really apologizes for, like, the childhood kind of trauma, like, because he felt like he wasn't really there. He felt quite absent.
And that was another me, like, thinking about what is the narrative between addiction and bad writing. Talks about bad writing goes about the kind of, like, descent and then the recovery. And I was like, that's BS. Like, you can get used to anything. There's kids in Syria, there's kids in Ukraine who are just processing it. It's when you change the status quo, and when those poor kids then are told, like, this didn't happen, that's what F's them up. And that's what I was thinking about. The family is dysfunctional, but they're operating, even though there's two alcoholic parents. It's when the dad gets sober and the status quo changes, and Jarred's used to, this kind of chaos, and then the chaos is no longer there, and Jack is really trying to be. That's when it explodes in kind of incredible. And that, to me, was a more interesting, fascinating story about that. Like, when you're an addict, you're always an addict. now you have to be an addict who can't use, and you got to live your life, which is hard, and not, use. And that's, to me, the more interesting story. So yeah, that's what I try, and that's what I try to write about that character. And again, telling the story of addiction that doesn't follow the stereotypes, just as like the story of disability, to like avoid the stereotypes. So
yeah. There's so many traps to fall into, aren't there?
yeah, and it's
I mean, like, how about like meeting people and like kind of meeting your readers and that, like, I mean, I think I'm asking this question as well because I've met readers who've said things about me, like personal things about me that have been based on like what they've read of the work. So, I got someone come up to me and just kind of say something like, "Oh, I thought you'd be more deaf," like, "Oh, I thought you'd be more disabled." "Oh, I thought," like, and I was like,
how disappointing.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so disappointed. I thought you can, you're not what I thought you'd be. Like, and this has happened a handful of times now, and it's so. Yeah. What I'm trying to be mindful of is like I really want to capture and take the opportunity in those moments to like just say something a bit smarter than I have been. Because what I've been doing, right, I've been getting defensive. I've been like, oh, like I'm over, like apologizing. Yeah. Oh, well, I'm sorry. Well, like basically, I mean, I start talking about like hearing aid technology and the years and years and years of speech therapy and all of this background stuff I've had, but then I'm like,
this is the confidence trick of the identity, and kind of shoving us in these little corners and being like, so that there's only one type of like, there's this identity called deafness, and it's this little band there, this narrow band in between the disabled experience, and that's what that's I mean, depends what mood I'm in. Like if I'm kind of channeling character Jarred, I'm an ass, and there's other times where I just want out of the conversation, and like the one I get is, and I don't know if I mentioned it in the book, but like and I can see it like a mile coming. I can see, this one's gonna say it, here it comes. And it's like, I was in a wheelchair for 3 months. And it's like, congratulations, it has nothing to do with me. I couldn't care less. The other,
I often get the I know what it's like to be deaf because I've been on an aeroplane and like for 9 hours my ears didn't pop. I've had many of those, and the colds. Oh yeah, I've had a cold. Oh, now I know how you feel, right? And then and it's very odd. Instead of like going like, what is his experience? Like, because that's the exciting thing for me, and I don't know what that is, and actually it's interesting. Because I think it's just that kind of that same urge to be seen. Like I have also had trauma, and maybe they're not doing it in the right way. Like it's kind of like, and it's really interesting when I kind of like. I do the same thing where like, so now I'm getting, because I'm I'm a writer with a, been identified as with a disability. The publishers send me tons of disability books, which is fine. I don't seek them out. I just read books. And I've read some really amazing books that I probably wouldn't have picked up because I'm like, man, what do I need to know? But you get some of them and you're like, I'm not that disabled. Like, I wish I could do that. Yeah. Well, I mean, but at the same time, I do understand. Yeah, like you say, I do understand one's need to identify, want to identify and connect with someone. But it's interesting that it's such a default. But then at the same time, I understand the flip side to that, which is like, you want to kind of protect and preserve, or in some ways curate a community. You want to see and find people who you want, who you can connect with. But there's still a kind of psychological thing there that I think that deserves more examination. Like I feel like it's interesting that, you know, we're talking about a default response.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
I mean, I remember this one woman, we were in like it was a group of us, and she had quite a profound stutter. And, you know, she was really open to kind of educate people.
yeah,
And I was like, man, I'd be like, just, I don't want to talk about, like,
yeah,
you know, and that was really, I remember being like, that's not me, but I'm glad she's cool, you know, that she's out there doing the work. And I'm kind of like, where am I? Maybe I'm too far, you know, too far to one side, and maybe I should be a little. But then again, I'm just like, man, I don't have time. I got kids. You
yeah.
know?
The kids thing is very true. My tolerance
Yeah,
for general
yeah, exactly. So,
fuckery is like, okay, I got kids, go home.
yeah, and that's it. So I don't know the answer, and I'm listening for other, and I'm watching for other people to see how they
Yeah,
interact, like what am I comfortable with, you know, as somebody, you know, I've written this book, and you know, I want it to be judged on the book. Is the book work, you know? And but inevitably you're gonna be, you know, people want, you know, this is, you know, the what do they call it? The USP, you know, your unique selling
oh,
point,
right,
and
right,
then
right.
that kind of thing. And I mean, I get it, and I'm fine with it, but it's also like, you know, I'm mostly fine with it, but like I kind of like, you know, does the work work? You know, that's
Yeah,
all
does the work? Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
So I should say, sorry, if anyone has any questions, because I've been very selfish with Jarred's time, energy, and generous talent. So if anyone does have any questions for Jarred, and it could be about, you know, the book, or if you haven't read the book, it could be about, you know, anything we've been discussing, anything that you're curious to know more about. We've only got a few minutes left, so it would be good if there's anyone out there who would like to also enjoy the company.
Yeah, just put it in the chat box, and yeah, ask anything. I mean, that's, yeah. So I mean, I can ask you a question.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I mean, so kind of our stories are that we have like crossed paths. I lived in the UK for 20 years. I'm American, but I moved to the UK. You're British. You moved to the US, and I think you kind of lived that. So, I mean, what are the kind of big kind of, in terms of just kind of like maybe kind of the writing culture, the publishing world, like, you know, kind of the culture, maybe even kind of like, you know, the culture, like the poetry culture, because that's a subset of a subset of a subset. So, yeah. What have you kind of observed as kind of differences, kind of like going back, you know?
I have observed, I keep getting, I don't want to, and this is something that my American family accused me of doing, and I totally agree with them. They're like, stop like attacking me with my culture. But like, I will say that like, I really felt a bit like, I've really been hoodwinked, man. Like from the outside, I was really like, America, the lights, the shining, glistening lights. And I get there and I'm living there and I'm like, holy shit, this place is gonna kill. Like, I'm actually gonna die. I'm actually gonna die. Like, I've seen some pretty horrific, I've seen stuff here. Like, and that's before, you know, I won't even get into it. It would take too long. But like, even, you know, yeah, I've got even closer to death or as close to death as I lived in South Africa at one point and saw some heavy stuff there too. But I guess it was like it surprised me, like this, like there's just the culture which is like this kind of relentless hustle, which I kind of had some idea of, but then when I like now got the tax burden, the insurance thing, I'm like, whoa. So just on that very basic level, it's been a bit of a shock. And just to say, the UK isn't that much better. I mean, we've got free healthcare. I think that's the biggest thing we've got going really in that sense. For now. But, I mean, I think we're gonna lose it. That's on this way out.
When I first moved to Scotland, so I lived in Scotland for 4 years. Literally, my first question, I was on like message boards, and I was like, in Scotland, what can kill you? And that's a genuine question, because I mean, I grew up in Florida and Texas, like, and like, one person was like, well, we got this snake and if you're a baby, it would kill you. and then somebody else said the Scots.
I mean, the third thing was like the Loch Ness monster. You fall.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, yeah, it's an intent, and it's really. And I remember in a workshop there was this English poet who wrote about this urban fox, as it was this like really dangerous thing, and I just giggled through the whole thing. I'm like, I mean, like I've actually swam near alligators unintentionally, but like, like it's
That's
just
so
like,
true. This is how I'm different now. I would have joined in the laughter, your laughter that you're having. I would have joined in. Whereas before, I would have like sat there like to the fox. Would have been like, yeah, that fox.
Ooh,
that
yeah,
fox
the
like
manky fox. Yeah, what is this? What is this manky fox? What is he a metaphor? I was like, that is, and he tried to make it some dangerous thing. I was like, my cat beats the foxes up in London. Like, no, I'm not having this.
I mean, yeah, because they're evoking like the Ted Hughes and all the kind of literary fox symbolism. It's all over like English folklore as well. So I know that there's that stuff going for it too. But you're right, like you're trying to create a sense of danger and impending doom to someone who genuinely has like, it's basically like a lot closer to those genuine dangers, like guns.
There's a few.
Thing I'm still not used to. Yeah, I'm still not used to it. Like I was living in New Orleans and I was just walked into a supermarket and this guy walked in with two handguns and like the strap thing, and it just immediately like made me nervous. But and it was so interesting. Like I turned to my wife and I'm like, "Are you nervous right now?" And she's like, "No, no." Like, this is not. This is something else. So I don't want to become that guy, that annoying Brit who kind of too much to say about American culture. But just to say, like I think the other part of your question was about the poetry, and it's so like I feel enriched overall, like by the kind of poetic literary landscape of America, like and being able to kind of be part of that and get to call American poets peers, and build that on what I've learned from the English poetry world. Overall I think I'm a richer, wider scoped poet for that.
I absolutely agree. I became an American writer by moving to the UK. It's funny, like having a book published by a British publisher, America. Just so it's like, oh, it's you're a British writer, so you might not get this, the attention, and it's just kind of fascinating. Like read the first page, I'm a local boy, and it's just really good. But it was just made me really think about language and kind of cultures in terms of like prose. I just fell in love with kind of the British Isles, kind of UK and Britain and Ireland, and just that really kind of obsession with precision. And I've taken that with me, and I've brought that to a very American voice. And now like learning French and being like, just made me really kind of think about language again. And I'll never be proficient in French. I'll always sound terrible. And my daughter already after a year is mocking my pronunciation in a very French way, I should add. Very condescending.
Wow.
But it's beautiful, but to me it's enriching my process, whereas the attitude of it is that you've somehow removed yourself from the tradition. And I just think that's and I think maybe in maybe more so in America is very kind of inward looking in that regard.
I think the British people have been indoctrinated with this idea of like, and this is from like the Beatles from like the 60s, of like, you gotta break the American market, you gotta, and that's a complete myth. Like that whole, like there isn't really, like you say, if you're a writer and that's the kind of creature you are, it's about language and it's about how you interact, like you say, with the culture, with literature, with like, that's what it's about, and you grow through that, and that kind of ends up in your work in an interesting way. And so like that whole thing about, how you talk about the industry, like the literature industry, is very different to, I think, how we talk about our actual practice and well-being and sensibilities, like as writers, as people like word-based entertainers, word-based.
God, don't say that out loud. They'll start using that.
I'm a word-based entertainer.
you can see some marketing guys, little hairs stand up. Like, ooh, entertainment. There's money in entertainment.
I think we've got to come to the end because I saw just a 3-minute warning about 25 minutes ago.
Yeah, I think it's time to let y'all go back to your cake.
All right.
But if you had anything to end with.
No, just thank you for hosting us, and it was a great. You basically, you guys got a glimpse of what our chat in the pub would be like if we were in the same continent. So this is brilliant. Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah. Thank you, Greenlight Books. You are genuinely one of my favorite bookstores. Anywhere, anytime I'm in New York, that's literally one of the bookshops it makes sure I hit. So yeah, this has been great to share your platform. Thank you.
Wow, that's very kind of you. Thank you. This was a great event. It really felt like we were in a pub listening to y'all talk. Thank you for the conversation. Folks at home, make sure to pick up a copy at the store or online. The Coward, available now, hardback. Also, we do have, I checked, a couple of Raymond's books in store as well. So check that out as well. And this is going to be available on YouTube in a couple of days if anyone wants to share it. And yeah, thanks. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thank you.